Welcome to our CEWT podcast. This is Continuing Education Workforce Training, or CEWT, short name CEWT. Thank you for joining us. I appreciate you being here. I'm Gary Salazar. I'm the Director of Continuing Education and Workforce Training at Idaho State University, and we are part of the College of Technology. We provide non-credit educational classes to our community and workforce training for them as well. This podcast is one of CEWT's outreach efforts to share both interesting conversations and stories on entrepreneurship, on health, and other general areas of interest. So we hope you'll find something that will be of benefit to you. It may help enrich your life or stimulate your thinking. Our format today is conversational. We'll focus on our topic and our guests for 20 minutes. The clock already started when we said welcome. So after 20 minutes, no matter where we're at in the conversation, we're going to call it at that point. We'll wrap it up, and this will help us both stay timely and on topic. So that's how we're going to go. And today, joining us for a conversation is Dr. Michael Allswede. Dr. Allswede is founding director of the residency in emergency medicine at Sunrise Consortium in Las Vegas, Nevada. Thank you for joining us. He is also a clinical associate professor at both the University of Nevada, Reno School of Medicine, and the Touro University College of Osteopathic Medicine. Dr. Allswede also serves as the chair of research committee of the American College of Osteopathic Physicians and is the president-elect of the Foundation for Osteopathic Emergency Medicine. You know, I read your resume, and there's a lot more there, so forgive me for cutting it short a little bit. A special note for us here, Dr. Allswede is also our keynote speaker at our upcoming emergency medicine conference here at Idaho State University on 17 and 18 May. We'll be talking with Dr. Allswede today about his experience with mass casualty and specifically any lessons learned from the Las Vegas shooting that occurred on 1 October in 2017. So welcome, Dr. Allswede. Welcome to CEWT Talk. I'm really glad to have you here. You're calling us from Nevada. Are you in Nevada right now?
Las Vegas, Nevada, sir.
Las Vegas, Nevada. Okay, well, great. Yeah, I've got a couple questions for you. Let's start with a very brief background snapshot. If you would talk briefly about your background and let the audience know, because you have a tremendous amount of experience in there, and I don't want to go through that, but there might be some highlights you'd like to share, something about your background leading up to this point.
For this purpose, I think your audience might be interested in knowing that I served as a battalion surgeon in Desert Storm. I also was a responding physician to the F5 tornado in Moore, Oklahoma in May of 2013. I also was a responder to the Shanksville United Airline 93 crash on September the 11th. I've got what in emergency medicine vernacular is called a black cloud, meaning that I tend to find bad things wherever I go.
Well, that's good that you're finding them rather than somebody else, but thank you so much. And thank you, sir, for your service during Desert Storm as well. Oh, okay. I am not completely familiar with what an emergency physician does. So would you perhaps take a few minutes to tell us what is an emergency physician, particularly in reference to mass casualty situations? What's your role there?
So emergency medicine physicians are broadly trained in diagnostics of a variety of various conditions. With respect to trauma, we're very well trained in trauma resuscitation, which would include airway, chest tubes, fluid resuscitation, emergency thoracotomy, those sorts of life-saving procedures. Although we do surgery, I am not a surgeon. So I don't go to the OR, I don't take out gallbladders or anything like that. Along the way, I've done my emergency medicine residency, and I've also completed a fellowship in critical care, which is intensive care medicine. So I'm something of a two-headed beast when it comes to this sort of thing.
Wow, that's pretty extensive, so thank you very, very much. If I can transition us briefly here to the main point of this, and I think you may be talking about this at our conference too, but for our audience here on this podcast, during the Las Vegas mass shooting event, your hospital, I think it was your hospital, was pretty key in the treatment of a lot of the gunshot wounds. And I recall there were a number of deaths both that arrived as well, and probably those that your team worked with. Would you maybe share how do you deal with such a mass casualty, a big trauma like that when that occurs? That had to be unexpected.
Well, obviously it was. No one had thought that this sort of thing was going to happen in our town. The exact circumstances were that I had actually worked that day, and I was home in bed and heard the phone light up, answered the call, and because I live very close to the receiving hospital, I showed up for work. Sunrise Hospital, along with Desert Springs Hospital, are the two closest hospitals to the event, and between the two of them, saw approximately 40-50% of those casualties. There were 16 hospitals total that saw casualties, but because of the proximity of our hospital to the venue of the concert, we saw the majority. When I got there approximately midnight, after which a lot of the most severely injured victims had already been triaged. The job that I did was triaging the 124 individuals that were classified as trauma yellow, which would be gunshots to the extremity, gunshots to the abdomen, but not immediately bleeding out at that moment.
Wow, that's an amazing start, especially at the end of the day for you, and then having to find that happen. How long were you there then doing all that treatment after your full workday? You went back to the hospital and then you're working there through the night.
Yeah, so I got there about midnight and worked steadily till about 4 a.m. My memories from that particular night are kind of a blur, because with all of those casualties, as severely injured as they were, I was just performing medicine as fast as I possibly could, moving to the next patient, to the next patient. It was all something of a blur. At about 4 a.m., we realized that we had accumulated most of my emergency medicine group at the hospital, and that no one was going to relieve us in the morning. And so what happened was I went home for 4 hours of sleep and then came back the next day. The next day was an entirely different perspective on the event, because by that point, the family members of the deceased had been notified. And so that particular day was an entire day of informing relatives of their deceased relatives. The problem with that in our event was that Las Vegas is a city of celebration. Most of the people at the concert were celebrating weddings and retirements and birthdays, etc. Girls' night out, boys' night out, all that sort of thing. The sudden jolt of an unexpected death in a previously viable person is a much more difficult situation than an elderly person dying of an expected disease.
Yeah, so you're continuing to work with people. You were also responding to the relatives who had been informed they were coming down and talking with you. Is that right?
Well, they were informed that their family member, was at the hospital, so they came. And the hospital put together a team, including an emergency physician, and I was one of those physicians, along with nursing, chaplain, health, and a social worker. And because we had so many to inform in such a short period of time, it was something of an assembly line situation. In my case, one of the gentlemen that I informed of the unexpected death of his fiancée chose to punch the wall and fracture his hand and become my emergency medicine patient on that same day.
Yeah, that's amazing. I guess there's no telling, how those kinds of incidents will go and which ways they'll turn. And then I hadn't even thought about all of the relatives coming in and then finding out and talking to people. Truly traumatic. When you tell me about this, I kind of think about, well, is this similar to what you may have experienced when you were in Desert Storm, or not?
To be honest with you, the Las Vegas shooting was by far the most volume, the most acuity that I had managed as an emergency physician. In Desert Storm, we would get patients, but we would have advance warning. We knew more or less what was coming. In this event, and if you come to my presentation, I'm sure you'll appreciate, there was a lot of difficulty understanding what was happening. The majority of the patients that we saw came by self-extrication. They flagged down taxis and cabs and just regular people to bring them to the hospital. The injury pattern was not apportioned, meaning that my hospital and Desert Springs Hospital got the majority of the most severely injured, not because of any plan that was a part of our municipal plan, but because we were close. In fact, one of the interesting vignettes is that if you were at the concert scene and you asked Siri on an iPhone about which the closest hospital was, you got Desert Springs. If you Googled closest hospital, you got mine. So the distribution of casualties in that event were entirely happenstance and completely determined by search engines, which nobody had previously thought of.
Yeah, and I can't imagine anybody would. I mean, what a tremendous lesson learned there for something that was happening. The logistics for something like this, you know, if it pops on you, the planning that needs to be in place in advance just seems immense. What a huge number of lessons learned, you know, your teams and those hospitals there must have received. I mean, is that the kind of information that, I mean, you're going to be talking at our emergency medicine conference, but is that the kind of information that is going out to all of our emergency rooms, all of our emergency responders? Are they getting this?
Well, the event in Las Vegas was an anomaly. It was by far the largest single shooting. It created all of those 600 victims within 12 minutes. Was overwhelmed. The hospitals were overwhelmed. In our case, the main advantage that we had is that Sunrise Hospital is the closest hospital to the Strip. Because of this, we get a lot of the injuries and unfortunate occurrences that occur on the Strip. We do have a yearly mass casualty event called New Year's Eve, when Las Vegas Boulevard is shut down and somewhere in the 200 to 300,000 people come out onto the street to revel in New Year's Eve, and some components of them make poorly considered choices. So the disaster plan that we enacted at the time was the same as our New Year's Eve plan. The lesson learned for me to impart on other systems is to, like Las Vegas, use a natural event at your location, be that a football game or a festival of some sort, to practice your disaster plan such that you have an increase in your volume, and you can then use your disaster triage and facility use skills, which are not normally used on a regular day.
Sure, sure. Does FEMA get involved with something like this? Do they have a hand in helping provide the information out or standardize responses?
FEMA has a number of guidance documents. The Joint Commission on Hospital Accreditation is who requires and reviews disaster drills. And I would say, in my experience across the country, that disaster drill emphasis is unevenly applied. Some people take it seriously, New York City, Chicago, etc. Some places not as seriously. We in Las Vegas fortunately have a terrorist profile with Islamic fundamentalists because we're the Sin City, if you will. And because of that, we do have a higher level of alertness and a higher level of planning.
That's kind of sad to hear. It's good to hear that Las Vegas, you know, had that level of preparation. You know, sad for the cause of it, but I imagine that, like you said, that at different states, different regions, different requirements and needs and circumstances would have a different impact on how well they're going to prepare or not. Do you know, is there any kind of a national repository or library of all these events that if somebody wanted to go look at those that they could? Are you aware of any such thing?
Well, that's actually the subject of a consensus statement proposal that I've written and has been supported by a variety of organizations representing emergency medicine. Because of the liability associated with hospitals responding to a supranormal number of acuity, high acuity patients, it's very difficult to get accurate information out of a single hospital. There are a number of guidance documents published most recently by the Institute of Medicine on how to manage those circumstances, but those guidance documents are largely aspirational, which means they end with and do the best for the most, or some other euphemism. What we need is actually a study group of individuals such as the Las Vegas physicians and community leaders to combine with Orlando and San Bernardino and Mary Stoneman Douglas, et cetera, because the amplitude and frequency of mass shooting events is increasing across our country. So we cannot just say, well, we'll hope this never happens again, because it will happen again. And although it not necessarily will happen to every physician out there, it will happen to some physicians most definitely every year. And so we need to do better at developing not only the hospital strategies, but also the medical workarounds for what to do when you run out of ventilators or IV fluid, or you don't have enough nurses, or you don't have enough bandages. We ran out of bandages.
Wow, that's significant. I mean, a hospital I usually think of is pretty well stocked with everything you need. But I can also see that if you have this huge casualty event come at you, there's probably things that you're going to need that you don't have right now, or that we're about to get restocked and they haven't been yet. Very, very important. As we near our emergency medicine conference date, Dr. Allswede, I imagine that there'll be some press outreach to us, asking us a little bit about you, and I'm hopeful that we can help you spread this message of better preparation, more planning, more events. Would you be okay if we were all able to direct some of those folks to you if they had questions?
Absolutely.
Okay, and then I have one more. This is a very curious question, so I'm probably off base here. If you'll help me out. Today in the news we read about the Ebola virus, which seems to be burgeoning in Africa. It seems to be getting bigger and bigger. It seems to go away and then it comes back. Is a reaction to an epidemic that might be coming further with that, is that related to a mass casualty incident? Is that the same?
They're actually quite different animals. The human body and psyche is very well attuned to an acute stressful incident. So if the bear is at the door, we have a lot of epinephrine, we have a lot of fight, flight, responses. Our sense of self-preservation is very strong, and we either fight the bear and the bear either wins, or we win and we live on, right? So we're very good at managing acute stressful incidents. An epidemic such as Ebola or the flu or a biological weapon event would create a whole different set of stresses on the human psyche, because you can't see where the enemy is. You don't know who has the flu and who does not. You don't know when you will get sick and when you will not. All you know is that people are dying, and they're dying in ever increasing numbers. And that level of constant fear over time is very destructive to the human psyche. Would be a difficult thing for us to be able to live through as a modern society. Our great-grandparents, who lived through polio, who lived through scarlet fever epidemics, are much better prepared for epidemics and living through epidemics than modern Americans are today.
Yeah, that's scary to hear. Newspaper all you hear now is measles. Oh, what you hear going off is our timer, Dr. Allswede. So we're gonna stay true to what we said and keep this to 20 minutes. I had a couple other questions, but I'll bring this to a close, and we'll look forward to seeing you when you come up here in May. So thank you again. Let me go ahead and say a couple comments. That our time is up. Thank you for talking with us today from Las Vegas. I appreciate you taking the opportunity and making yourself available. We do hope that our audience here has gained some new insights into mass casualty and emergency medicine. Again, for everybody out there, Dr. Allswede will be our keynote speaker at the Emergency Medicine Conference on May 17th and 18th. We look forward to that. He'll be headlining a large group of very sterling speakers and topics, so that's going to be a great event. We hope you can join us. You can find us at online at cetrain.isu.edu. Dr. Allswede's presentation, which will be out there in May. Plus this, we hope to get that online. By the way, his topic will be mass casualty, heroes and heroines, lessons from Las Vegas. And he's going to highlight that when he comes here. If you want copies of this blog, please join us online at the CE Train address and look us up. Subscribe to the blog, and you'll have an opportunity to see a lot of these types of videos and lessons learned. Dr. Allswede, thank you again. Thanks to all of you out there for listening to Sweet Talk.